So far in this course, we have looked at single phase circuits from the power point of view. And we also started talking a bit about three phase circuits. Before going any further on the three phase circuits, let me solve a numerical problem on a single phase circuit from the point of view of drawing the power triangle. The theory is not difficult, but it's good to go through one sample calculation and see whether we understand every nuance involved or not. This is one circuit where the load is purely resistive, but in between there is something connected which may be representing a real life machine. Close enough, I suppose. It's an LC circuit, series LC circuit. We have a source of 120 volt RMS. Generally, we do not mention RMS. It is understood that values of voltage and current by default are RMS values. The frequency is 60 hertz, which is the value they use in the United States. In India, we use 50 hertz. We have a capacitor of 4.7 microfarad, followed by a series LC circuit with the values shown, and then the entire thing connected to a purely resistive load, which has got a value 470 ohm to begin with, and then we are supposed to repeat our calculations for 235 ohm as well. Important thing is that we need to draw the power triangle as accurately as we can. Basic circuit theory would apply here, and I will simply go through the motions of showing it to you. You can do it yourself, I know. At 60 hertz, first step would be to calculate the reactances involved. What is the reactance associated with C1? What is the reactance associated with C2? What is the reactance associated with L, right? That's what I do here. And I'm hoping there is no calculation mistake. It's always possible. So when you get the document, double check my calculations. XC1 is 564.38 ohm. It's a real value. Reactance is always real. It is the impedance which is complex. For C2, similarly, I get the corresponding reactance, 1768.39 ohm. For the inductor also, I use this well-known formula. I get the reactance as 245.04 ohm. Okay, then it is elementary circuit theory. What I have done is what I am showing you. You may do it differently, quite possible. What I did was I took the parallel combination of L and C2 and R. I'm initially assuming R to be 470 ohm. So the parallel combination of 470 ohm and the combination of L and C2 at 60 hertz gives me an impedance which you can verify yourself once you see the document. I get, first of all, I calculate the impedance of the LC circuit, okay? And then I take the parallel combination with 470 ohm. So it's all given here. The ultimate result for that parallel combination's impedance turns out to be this one. 429.19 minus J 132.41 ohm. You have done many problems like that in your life so far. Okay. To that, I add the impedance offered by C1 to get the total impedance of the circuit. And that turns out to be total impedance seen by the voltage source turns out to be ZT equal to this value here. Okay. And this can be converted to polar form also if necessary. Now, what? This, I'm repeating the circuit here. These are the various current designations that I have used. Suppose IS is the current, complex current coming from the source. It would be divided into two parts. Capital I goes through the load. The remaining IS minus I goes through the parallel combo of L and C2. So we do all the calculations. First of all, I can calculate total value of current coming from the source as Vs divided by Zt. Vs is given to me. I plug in the values. I get the total current as 146.63 milliamperes with a phase angle of 58.37 degrees. And correspondingly, real and imaginary parts are also given here. Okay. Now that current divides into two parts. And we can always calculate that if necessary. But more important is the power scenario. How much power, how much complex power is the source delivering? One natural question we ask in power systems. That is defined as Vs multiplied by complex conjugate of Is, assuming that we are talking RMS values of Vs and Is. If these were peak values, I would have put 1/2 in the beginning of the right hand side. So I know Vs, I know Is. I plug in the complex conjugate of Is here, and I calculate the complex power delivered by source. Keep in mind that power triangle can be drawn at various locations in the system. It can be drawn right at the source. It can be drawn even at the load. In between also, if you decide, you can figure out power triangle at that point, But right now, I'm looking at power triangle at the source first. And power balance has to apply ultimately. No power can be lost anywhere. So the complex power delivered by the source has got real part. You will verify these numbers, I'm sure, later. But supposing my calculations are right, then the real power delivered by source is 9.23 watt approximately. And the reactive power is minus 14.98 VAR. Okay, so something has been missed. Actually, no, it's VA. The total complex power has the units VA, but individual components have different units. The real part has unit watt, the imaginary part has unit VAR. So QS is minus 14.98 VAR. Yeah, R has been missed in scanning. Please make the correction once you get the document. And PS, of course, is 9.23 watts. So the power triangle at the source edge, what is shown here. QS is negative, so you will have a vertical line going down. And PS and QS need to be drawn as close as possible to their real values. PS is 9 point something and QS is 14 point something. So I have tried to maintain that ratio. Maybe I'm wrong. And the angle between PS and QS is obviously what you see here. Minus of this, minus of whatever is the angle for IS. Okay. So this is how you draw power triangles. This is for the source at least. Okay. Basically, you take Vs and you take Is, complex values. Then take the complex conjugate of Is and multiply with Vs in the complex domain. 1/2 will be required if you are dealing with peak values of Vs and Is. Otherwise, you don't need 1/2 in the beginning. So do the math carefully before you decide whether Q is negative or positive and what are the actual values for P and Q. Then sketching the power triangle is the last step, which is based on the numbers that you got. Now on the load side, what will happen to this triangle? Obviously, it will not be exactly the same thing at load because there are things in between, you know. So what I have done is I've calculated both the individual currents now that are flowing in the two branches, IS minus I and I. Actually, what I need is I. I don't need IS minus I anyway. So you can do the basic circuit theory to figure out I, which I have done here, hopefully without any mistakes. You can do it probably faster than I can, I know. The value of I that I got is 105.39 plus J 92.34 milliampere approximately, which has polar equivalence as 140.12 milliampere with a phase angle of plus 41.22 degrees. So the power triangle what happens to power triangle here? That's a very interesting thing conceptually. Even though current is complex, keep in mind that load is purely resistive. So phase shift between voltage and current, voltage across the load and current in the load will not be there. The voltage across the load will simply be current I multiplied by R. Complex value, I know, but there is no phase shift between them. V is Ri. V has same phase angle that I has. So if you take V into I complex conjugate, the angles disappear. They cancel each other. What I'm trying to tell you is that even though current is complex, the load, the power triangle on the load side is a flat line. That's it. There is no Q at all. That's why I'm looking at this problem carefully. Okay. S has only real part. S is supposed to be Vi star, and V has phase angle which is negative of the, which is same as the phase angle of I. So when you take complex conjugate of I, the angles cancel each other. The only thing that gets multiplied are the magnitudes of V and I. So S turns out to be a purely real number on the load side. That's why the power diagram or power triangle is only a flat line on the load side. Okay. Had the load been complex, yes, it would have been a different story. Now you can repeat the same problem with a different resistance value for the load. The qualitative nature will not change. On the load side, you will still get a horizontal line, but the value will be different. Okay. What I'm trying to tell you indirectly is that in a water heater, although you are supplying AC, which will produce a current with some phase shift, Q is still almost zero because load is purely resistive. There's a note here. What I'm writing is that although I have done all the calculations very carefully and then have come up with the flat line for load power triangle, the reality is I could have predicted it intuitively. The nature of load determines the nature of power triangle. A purely resistive load will always have a flat line instead of a triangle. Okay. This problem was worth looking at. Okay, there's another one here, but I don't think we are in a position to solve it right now, so I'll ignore that. This is regarding three-phase systems. We have not yet gone through three-phase systems in detail. Now coming back to three-phase systems. Remember last time I was telling you the benefits of three-phase power over single-phase power. One thing is the economics. Three-phase power is more economical. For the same amount of material or money, you can transmit a lot more power using three-phase systems than single-phase systems. The other advantage is that from three-phase, you can always supply single-phase customers. But from single-phase, you cannot supply three-phase customers. So it is better to have three-phase generation and three-phase transmission. And then distribution can be both single-phase and three-phase. One more very clear advantage was that three-phase systems have no, at least in balanced systems, three-phase system have instantaneous power, which has no time-dependent component. That was another advantage. And I also showed you the two different ways of connecting the three generators in three-phase systems. The generators, by the way, have 120-degree progressive phase shift, either plus or minus among them. And there are three generators. They can be connected either in delta form or in star form, which is also known as Y form. Generators can be connected either in delta form or in Y form. The same applies to the load also. For distribution side, we generally divide load into delta and Y connections in order to simplify the logistics and analysis. So today, rather than first talking about the signal generators and connected in delta or Y configuration, let me first talk about load connected in delta and Y configuration. In general, all the three branches will have complex loads. That's the reality. On the left side here, you see delta connected three-phase load. And it's a balanced load in the sense that all the branches have identical impedance, which I am calling Z delta. On the right-hand side, I'm showing a star load or Y load, which actually has a neutral terminal also, which is not there in the delta load anyway. The star load is also balanced in the sense that all the branches have identical impedance values, which are denoted by ZY. Now, for analysis purposes, it is a very good technique to convert one kind of load to another kind of load or other way around all the time. Equivalences. That simplifies analysis in many cases. Simulation tools that we have for three-phase systems use this technique of converting from delta to Y load or Y to delta load all the time to improve the accuracy and to improve the simulation times. But let's look at the basics involved. If you are given a delta load with all the three branches having identical impedance, what will be the equivalent star load? Okay, these are balanced loads in both cases. The left side is given to you, right side is what you are trying to figure out. Suppose I want to represent a delta load by an equivalent Y load, how would it look like? Assuming balanced loads. I am giving the same node numbers in both cases, capital A, capital B, capital C. Now the technique to figure out ZY value in terms of Z delta value is to calculate the input impedance between, let's say, capital A and capital C in both cases and equate the result. And then do the same thing between capital B and capital C in both cases and equate the result. And then do between capital B and capital A and equate the same result. Because of balanced systems, you don't have to do it 3 times. Doing it once is enough to give you the result. You want to figure out the formula that connects ZY to Z delta. That's your objective. And it's fairly easy to figure out. Equating impedance between A and B. Okay, I'm doing A and B, right? So between A and B on the left side, you have got Z delta and then a parallel combination of Z delta plus Z delta. That means 2 Z delta. So the total impedance between A and B in the delta load is Z delta multiplied by 2 Z delta and the entire thing divided by 3 Z delta. Whereas on the right hand side, if you do the same exercise between A and B, you get 2 ZY because C is open. So between A and B, you will get 2 ZY. So these two have to be equal. if you want to maintain the equivalence between the two. So that resulting equation gives you a very straightforward formula to figure out ZY in terms of Z delta, or other way around. We get Z delta equal to 3ZY. So if you know the impedance of each branch in Z delta in the delta load, divided by 3 to get the equivalent impedance in the star load, assuming identical loads in all the branches. Very simple formula. Okay, this mathematics is straightforward. ZY is Z delta by 3 for balanced loads for sure. Even if you forget the formula, you can always do it using basic principles. In fact, I forget this formula all the time. I get confused. 3 goes where all the time. So I do it for using first principles all the time. But you may have better memory than me. So feel free to memorize the formula. Now, suppose the branches have unequal impedances. That means we have unbalanced loads. Mathematics becomes a little more complicated, but doable. Case 2, unbalanced loads. I'm assuming that between capital A and capital B in the delta load, I have got ZAB. Between capital B and capital C, I have got ZBC, and between capital C and capital A, I have got ZCA. That's my assumption. In books, they use different notations than what I am using. So if you are looking at a book, make sure you understand the notations they are using versus what I am using. Now, equivalent star load, I'm assuming, will have Z capital A in the top branch, and on the right low branch ZB, and the other one is ZC. That's my assumption. A, B, C terminals are still the same in both cases. So the theory is the same. You write the input impedance between A and B in both cases, equate it, you get one equation. You write input impedance between B and C in both cases, equate them, you get second equation. You write input impedance between C and A in both cases, equate them, you get third equation. So assuming that we know ZAB, ZBC, and ZCA, and our unknowns are ZA, ZB, and ZC, we still get 3 equations which can be solved to figure out ZA, ZB, ZC in terms of ZAB, ZBC, and ZCA. And opposite is also possible, by the way. So that's what I have done here carefully as I could. Equating impedances between A and B. Between A and B, I have got ZAB in parallel with ZCA plus ZBC. Okay, that's what I'm doing. And the entire thing divided by ZAB plus ZBC plus ZCA. That's on the left side. On the right hand side, between A and B, I will get ZA plus ZB. That's what I'm writing as equation 3. That's one equation. Now, a similar exercise between B and C will give me ZBC multiplied by ZCA plus ZAB divided by ZAB plus ZBC plus ZCA. And between B and C, I will get ZC plus ZB. Yeah, that's what I've written as equation 4. And then the third one is between C and A, and you can see that this equation is the result of equating input impedances between A and C in both the networks. Okay, so we have got 3 equations for 3 unknowns. Equation 3, 4, 5 for the 3 unknowns, ZA, ZB, ZC. Then I have solved it. You can solve it in so many different ways. I did it in my own way. Okay, so the ultimate formulas for ZA, ZB, ZC turn out to be these. ZA turns out to be ZCA, ZAB divided by ZAB plus ZBC plus ZCA. It is difficult to remember these formulas, I know. Although there is a logic here, but we'll come to it later. ZA is given by this. ZB is given by, actually first I have derived ZC for some reasons. Yeah. ZC is ZCA, ZAB divided by the same denominator. In all the three formulas, the denominator is identical. Whether ZA, ZB or ZC, you see the same denominator, but numerator changes. In case of a ZA, in case of the ZA formula, the numerator has those two impedances multiplied which have A in common on the delta side. This is the logic people use to remember the formula. Similarly, for ZC, the two impedances that are being multiplied in the numerator have C common. And for ZB, similarly, the two impedances have B common. But again, if you don't remember this logic, maybe it's a good idea to consult literature and make sure you have the right formula to begin with. One mistake in picking the wrong formula can create disaster in the rest of the calculations. So ZAB, ZBC, ZCA will be given to you. Using the correct equations, you figure out ZA, ZB, ZC. In general, everything is possibly a complex number. ZCA will be a complex number, ZAB, ZBC, same thing. And the results also, ZA, ZB, ZC will in general be all complex numbers. The entire thing can be done in the other direction also. Suppose you are given star load and you want to convert it into equivalent delta load. That means you are given ZA, ZB, ZC, and your objective is to figure out ZAB, ZBC, ZCA. I have not done the detailed derivation. In fact, I have relied on people doing it correctly. And the formulas that people have derived in books are these. If by chance you know star load correctly, then delta load can be calculated using these formulas. Same equations, but solved in the opposite direction. Here also you see numerator is identical in all the three cases, but denominator has the impedance which is logically determined somehow. If you want to calculate ZAB, the denominator has ZC. If you are calculating ZBC, denominator has ZA. And if you are calculating ZCA, denominator has ZB. But I'll make sure you have access to these formulas in the exams and quizzes, etc. Okay. Because I know in the panic when you're going through an exam, you may forget the logic. It's better to have the correct formulas in front of you. Now look at the problems based on these formulas. These are calculation problems, but they are worth looking at in the sense that they are very illuminating. A very simple one to begin with. This is a balanced load, balanced delta load given to you on the left side. All impedances have 10 ohm values. So ZY is Z delta by 3. We have proven it right in the beginning. Right? Yeah. ZY is Z delta by 3. So I'm using that in problem 1. Right here. ZY is simply 10 divided by 3. Oh, simple answer. It's a balanced load and purely resistive anyway. Make sure you don't make a mistake of giving me 30 ohm answer on the right hand side. But where 3 goes has to be done carefully. Now repeat problem 1 for delta load shown below. Okay. One important thing here is that the formula is valid for impedance, and you are given now 3 inductances which are equal. You are not given the frequency, but suppose frequency is F. Then the impedance of each of the branch will be J 2 pi F multiplied by L, which is L is 35 millihenry, right? So J 2 pi FL will be divided by 3 to get the impedance of each branch in the equivalent star load. And if you want to convert that back to inductances, then F will go away again because you will divide by 2 pi F. That's why frequency information is not necessary. The answer is simply divide the inductances by 3. Purely inductive delta load has the equivalence, which also has purely inductive branches. Of course, I suppose other answers are possible, but I'm looking at the obvious answer. So simply divide inductances by 3. Now suppose these 3 were not inductors in the delta load, but were capacitors. What would happen? Here we go. All are equal. But now obviously, of course, I have twisted the problem here. I am giving you star load to begin with. And I want you to calculate the corresponding delta load. Even I got confused in the beginning. But look at the fact that whatever happened in case of inductors will be now we'll see the opposite of that. Here the inductors were divided by 3 when going from delta to star. So now if you go from delta to star, the capacitors will be multiplied by 3, which is what I think we are seeing. In the delta load, if you have got 25 divided by 3 microfarads in the 3 branches, then in the corresponding star load, you'll have 25 microfarad. Because reactance of a capacitor is 1 upon 2 pi fc. Okay, so that fact has to be kept in mind. Practice these things yourself. Okay. Now, little bit more complicated problem. I want you to think about it for a minute. Here, frequency information it may still not be required. I want you to think about it carefully. Because if frequency is f, you know that the factor of 3, whichever way, would apply to each of the components. And once you convert back, f will go away again in this case. I've done that, I think. Actually, no. Yeah, I've given you the solution right here. All the inductors get multiplied by 3 and all the capacitors get divided by 3. You don't have to know frequency in this case. Look at it carefully once you get the notes. Okay, let me move to the next one. Purely resistive load, again, but unbalanced. (22 ohm, 300 ohm, and 68 ohm. So if you go by the notations that I have used, you write RCA as 68 ohm, RAB as 22 ohm, and RBC as the remaining value, 300 ohm. And the formula for RA, I derived ZA in terms of ZAB, ZBC, ZC, but in this case, everything is purely resistive, so I'm using the notation R throughout. Okay, so this is again straightforward application of the formula, but do it right. RA turns out to be 3.84 ohm. Obviously, RB will be different now because we are looking at unbalanced load. RB is this formula. It turns out to be 16.92 ohm. There are online converters available to double check your answers. But of course, in the exam, you will not have that luxury. RC is again straightforward calculation, so the answers are right here. RA is 3.84 ohm, RB is 16.92 ohm, and RC is 52.31 ohm. In fact, ideally, you should now double check. Take a delta load with these R values and use the formulas to convert the, sorry, take a star load with these RA, RB, RC values and use the formulas in the reverse direction. I have given you those formulas also to make sure that you get the original value 68 and 22 and 300 ohm. That will catch any calculation mistakes. Again, I know in the exam it's probably not possible because of the time pressure, but in real life, you should always double check calculations before moving forward. Okay, one more. Again, I suppose it is. Oh yeah, actually, yeah, I have I have taken this problem and I have done solved it in the reverse direction now. Yes, I have done it actually. Good. I have taken RA, same as I got in the previous problem, 3.84 ohm. RB as what I got in the previous problem as 16.92 ohm. Yes, and RC as 52.31 ohm. So if I use the equations in the opposite direction, I should be able to get back the same RB, RAB, RBC, RCA that I had given here. Okay. And I think I got them right. Formulas now are here. RP is a notation that normally is used to denote this combination, this factor, RARB plus RBRC plus RCRA. That is common in all the three formulas, right? If you want to convert star load into delta load. So using all those formulas, double check that you are getting back the same values of delta load that were given in the beginning of the previous problem. Okay. Now what? I know I'm rushing a little bit because it is all calculations, nothing else. Okay, this you should double check. I've given you the solution. Make sure there's no mistake in the values I gave you. Now, a bit more complicated scenario, which is more close to reality. Homes, industries, they have a lot of things connected to the power system. The most general representation will always be RLC circuit or lot of RLC circuits. But of course, I'm not making things that complicated right now. I'm still being reasonably simple by assuming that I have a parallel LC circuit in each of the branches and I'm assuming balance load to simplify the problem. It's a Y network. What should be the equivalent delta network? Do we need frequency? I've given you the value anyway. So what you do is you calculate the impedance of each of the branches in the star load. Of course, they are all equal anyway. J omega Ly multiplied by 1 upon J omega C, then J omega Ly plus 1 upon J omega Cy. Do that calculation. Omega actually does not cancel out, interestingly. That's why I think I gave you frequency. In this case, frequency info is necessary. So Zy is J omega Ly divided by 1 minus omega square Ly Cy for each of the loads, for each of the branches. So I plugged in the values. Omega is 2 pi f, of course. I got Zy equal to a purely imaginary number, which is what we expect, of course. It is almost 4.0709 ohm, J. Now you apply the formula to convert this into delta load. And it's a balanced load, so simply a factor of 3 would do the job. Z delta is J3 multiplied by 4.0709 ohm. So a purely inductive load, a purely inductive component is usable to represent the given star load as a delta load. Fine. Keep in mind, though, suppose Zy value you had got as a negative J something. That can happen, right? Depending on what values of Ly, Cy, etc. are given. I think it's possible. Yeah. Suppose you had got negative J something instead of positive J something, then here the answer would have been all capacitors, I think, not all inductors. Once you know the impedance, Z delta, divided by 2 pi f to calculate the inductance in each branch of the delta load. Okay, this is getting more real now. One delta load and one star load connected in parallel. This is how real life works anyway. ZY is now 4 plus J6 ohm and Z delta is 12 minus J15 ohm. Convert the load into its delta equivalence and Y equivalence. The technique is, let's say we want to convert this complex load into a delta equivalent load. So what you do is the star load inside, you convert that into delta load. And then you will have the total combination having each branch with two parallel impedances. And then you simplify from there. If you want to get the answer in Y equivalence, then you convert the outer delta load into corresponding Y equivalence. Okay, and then simplify. So that's what I've done here. If you want delta equivalence, let us first convert the Y portion into its delta equivalence. So it becomes this, only the inner portion, outer portion remains as it is. So the given load, I have not drawn it, but given load will have each branch with Z delta and 3ZY parallel, right? You can try to see it this way. If I replace the star load in the original load by this equivalent delta load, then between A and C, I'll have two impedances in parallel, Z delta and 3ZY. And similar story in the other branches also. Yeah, so that combination I have figured out, and I have got the equivalent impedance in each of the delta load, each branch of the delta load. Okay. Check the calculations. They are fairly involved. Each calculation may take about 10 minutes to get to the right answer. And even then you scratch your head. Did I make a mistake? Am I okay? That question is always there when making these kind of calculations. As usual, when you're making calculations in complex numbers, if you have to multiply two numbers, use polar form. If you have to divide one number by other, use polar form. But if you have to sum up or subtract, then rectangular form is better. In real world, we always write MATLAB programs or programs in any other language to do these calculations. But for the sake of this course, in the exams and quizzes, you may have to do calculations. I'll try not to give such complicated problems as far as possible. But I'm giving you an understanding of the magnitude of calculations that are involved in power systems. This is a very simple example of real life, very simple example. In fact, there will be maybe hundreds of such loads connected in parallel to each other in real world. Each home is a load, each apartment, each flat is a load. Each room in the hostel is a load, So that is why these calculations go beyond our control, and people have no choice but to use simulation tools. And that too, all calculations are in complex domain. Interesting. Okay, let's complete this. If you had to do Y equivalence, you will take the outer part of the load and convert it into equivalent Y load. Okay. So that converts to this. And then, of course, this goes in parallel with the Y load inside the load. And then you simplify where it is. Yeah. Just 1 minute. Yeah, this Y load inside will go in parallel with the other Y load that you have got as the equivalence for the outer delta. So this is the formula I got. And then, of course, you have to do the calculations again. Oh, boy. What a life. I'm hoping there is no mistake in my calculations. But anyway, I'm trying to give you a flavor of what is involved. Detailed calculations, of course, take time. Okay, so this is what we should know about delta star load interconversion issues. Maybe one more document in the same direction would be helpful. Let me see. Yeah, one simple problem, numerical problem based on this. Okay, it's purely resistive at least. Thank you. There's no complex number involved here, I think. For the load shown below, calculate REQ. Use delta Y transformation. Now, obviously, there's more than one way in which you can tackle this, I know. And I'm not going to give you the answers, I'm going to give you the philosophical background of how to tackle all this. Your objective is to figure out R equivalent, right? And you have got two deltas with one branch common. And of course, the first 9 ohm will remain as it is. You cannot do much about it. So what we have done in this case is look at the delta load between A, B, and D. What? A, yeah, A, B, and D. I got it. Yeah, which is this guy containing 10 ohm, 5 ohm, and 10 ohm. And let us convert that into equivalent star. Formulas are there with you. You can do the calculations. They are repeated here again. So the star load replacement for this combo of 10 ohm, 5 ohm, and 10 ohm will be this 2 ohm, 2 ohm, and 4 ohm. So that load that was given to you gets transformed this way. That delta is gone. It is the top delta is gone, and it is replaced by a Y load with equivalent values. So you get this now. And now it's easy to simplify. I have not completed the exercise. Now it's fairly easy. You have got 9 ohm in series with 2 ohm, and then you have got two parallel branches, each containing, well, one of them containing 4 plus 8 ohm, the other one containing 2 plus 4 ohm. R equivalent is straightforward now. I did not do the full solution. You can do it, I'm sure. More examples. Actually, although Y and delta are commonly encountered load networks, the third category is bridge network, which is also shown in this document here. It is like Wheatstone bridge, essentially, where you have got 5 resistances. But I will avoid talking about bridge network, at least in this course. In other courses, I'm sure you must have been introduced to this network. Power systems usually try to confine themselves to Y and delta type of load connections. There are T and pi type of connections also, which are actually delta and Y, but different names are given. So don't get too confused when you read this document. Stick to Y and delta. subtract the rest of the information on this slide. Okay, just look at Y and delta. That's what we care about at this point in time. The author is becoming too general in describing the possibilities. Okay, so between Y and delta, of course, notations used by this author are different from what I was using. For star connection, he is using R1, R2, R3, and he is not using complex loads. He is using resistors. Fine. For complex load, R would be replaced by Z throughout. That's it. And for delta load, he is using RA, RB, RC. So keeping that in mind, he has derived the formulas for converting back and forth between star and delta. I have done that already in my notes. So you can use that, or you can use these formulas as long as you understand the notations that are being used in the formulas. These formulas given here are identical to those done by me in my notes. Okay. So this derivation is something already done. There's no need to memorize. That's what he's telling you. There's a logic in remembering these formulas. But again, logic may fail when you're rushing for time. I know that. Anyway, let's look at some numerical problems. Okay, he is continuing deriving the equations, which we have already seen in the previous documents. Let's look at the examples now. And we would assume that formulas being used are correctly used. We will believe the numerical calculations. Let's look at the philosophy involved in simplifying complex loads to simpler ones. This is the load given to you on the right top. Very complex load. All values are real, I know, but it is a complicated load. So how do you break it up? His approach is convert the Y network into delta comprising 5 ohm, 10 ohm. Oh yeah, actually I did that in my previous example also. Same problem, but he has got little more here compared to what I had. Fine. So what he's saying is you take the network containing 5 ohm, 10 ohm and 20 ohm, this Y network in the middle, and convert it into equivalent delta. And using the formulas, the values turn out to be these 17.5 ohm, 70 ohm, and 35 ohm. Now, you replace that star connection by this delta connection. And this is what you get. This star connection of containing 5 ohm, 10 ohm, and 20 ohm is replaced by equivalent delta connection containing 17.5 ohm, 70 ohm, and 50 ohm. You please verify the calculations that these values are actually correct. So the given load now looks like this. And then I think it's easy enough. 70 ohm and 30 ohm being in parallel can be simplified, and you get 21 ohm. I think they're correct. Then between A and this central node, we have got 12.5 ohm and 17.5 ohm in parallel. So that combination will give you, I think, 7.292 ohm approximately. And on the bottom side, I've got 15 ohm and 35 ohm in parallel. So that should result into 10.5 ohm. So the given load now simplifies to this, which is very straightforward. No issue now. You have got 10.5 ohm plus 7.292 ohm as one branch and 21 ohm as the other branch. And the parallel combo of these two will give you the equivalent resistance. Figure it out. 9.532 ohm, or 9.632 ohm is the answer. Okay. I'm assuming there is no mistake in calculations. Hopefully there are none. More examples using delta Y formulas, how to simplify loads. It's a fairly complex load, fairly complicated load. Let's not say complex. Complex means complex numbers. What I think he's doing is he's taking the star load containing 10 ohm, 20 ohm, and 5 ohm, and converting it into delta. And then he's moving forward with the result. I think you can go through it carefully, but the philosophy seems to be that. There's a lot more in this document. I don't think I want to go on and on. There's a lot more here in terms of practical problems. So, but I hope you get the idea that it is not that easy to convert real life loads in a form which are easier to analyze from the simulation point of view. Delta Y formulas in both directions are one of the keys that help you to achieve the goal. Okay. Now, okay, let me see if I can. Maybe this will be an interesting document as well. Okay, let me show you this document, and maybe you will not understand everything, but at least it captures what I was telling you last time. As I told you last time, there are 4 kinds of possibilities in power systems. One is Y connected source and Y connected load. The other is Y connected source and and delta connected load. Then we have delta connected load and delta connected source, and then we have the last one. So permutations and combinations of Y and delta are 4, out of which YY and delta delta are the ones which are commonly analyzed. The other 2 possibilities, delta Y and Y delta, can be done either ab initio or can be done by converting the load appropriately in a form so that the overall result is for which you have already done the analysis. Okay, we'll see how it goes. If time permits, we'll go into each one of them. But in the meantime, let's capture the discussion once again. Why are 3-phase systems so important? And then I'll go into detailed analysis of YY system to begin with. As I showed you maybe at least once in the past, that power system means generation, transmission, and distribution. And generation is 3-phase, transmission is 3-phase, distribution is a mixture of single phase and 3-phase. Transformers are there to step up the voltage from the generating side so that you are transmitting at a very high voltage, which is a lot more economical. On the receive side, you have to step down the voltage to come to a value which is required by the society, 220 volt, 440 volt, and so on. And generally, it's not possible to go from a very high voltage to very low voltage in one transformer. You may have to use several of them, slowly stepping down and slowly stepping up. Okay, transmission lines, you have already been taught in other courses, but here the focus is that frequency is only 50 hertz or 60 hertz. Even then, there is a lot of practical considerations that one has to worry about when designing and building and operating transmission lines for power systems. I'll come to that maybe little later. But transmission lines do play a very important role. They are running all over the country from one point to another. No matter where you go, you see transmission lines around you. So that's the only way we can get power to people. Now, 3-phase generators, one advantage I told you is that power has no time dependence. What it means is, in case of motors, the mechanical power generated will also be constant. It will have no vibrations with time. And we will come to a concept called torque, which is related to power. So 3-phase systems essentially give you vibration free, or in theory at least, they can give you vibration free operation for the mechanical side of the story. This becomes very helpful in, let's say, satellite missions or in many other applications. Even under normal operating conditions, factory would prefer not to have any oscillatory behavior in the mechanical power coming out of a system. So 3-phase has that inherent advantage of being able to give you constant power with time, at least in theory. In practice, it's not that easy all the time. Industrial applications such as high power motors, welding equipment, etc., they all demand constant power with no time variation in it. And three-phase systems, at least theoretically, can give you that. Source, generation, transmission line, and load. These are the three basic components of a three-phase power system. Why a balanced three-phase circuit can be analyzed? It's easier. Kirchhoff's current law, Kirchhoff's voltage law, Ohm's law, etc. are easier to apply if you are dealing with a balanced system. A lot of unknowns will be there in the system. How much voltage is being generated from each generator, that is generally known. But then how much will actually come out from the 3 lines or 4 lines? That is something we have to figure out. We'll do that soon. We try our best to generate one-phase equivalent circuits for three-phase systems, especially if they are balanced systems. And that helps. Why the total instantaneous power is constant, I'll prove it mathematically later. Three-phase systems. Okay, generator essentially is a large amount of conductors mounted on a cylinder rotating in a magnetic field. That, using Faraday's law, gives you a voltage coming out. That's how AC voltage is generated, whether single phase or three phase. So that is what he's showing here. Lot of details. We will not go through them right now. An appropriate time will come in the course when we will be looking at AC and DC generators more in detail. That's when I'll explain all this to you. Right now, just take the basic idea that it's rotating conductors in a magnetic field that are doing the job. The rotating side is generally inside, and the magnetic field is being produced by the outer side, which is not rotating generally. Other way around is also possible. So 3 output voltages come out from the generator. They have 120-degree progressive phase shift between them. They have equal frequency, hopefully, and they have equal amplitude. And they, as we have already seen, they can be connected either in Y or star form or in delta form. In Y form or in Y configuration, an extra wire called neutral wire can also come out. In delta configuration, it's not possible. Look at the polarities very carefully. In star configuration, all the negative sides are bundled together. In the delta side, the negative of one becomes the positive of the other. One extra advantage of three-phase systems is that, suppose, look at the left side of the diagram. Suppose VB generator goes out completely. It is broken. Something happened, accident or something. You can still get voltage between A and C. 2 lines will still be operating. Right? B will be gone, fair enough. But A and C will be able to handle a lot of customer requirements. So everything is not lost if one generator is lost. Even in the delta side, if suppose VA is broken, the other 2 guys will continue to supply power. Although not the same amount of power. Everything will be reduced. Yes, I know. And it requires a lot of mathematical analysis to figure out what would happen if one generator breaks completely. In fact, in delta case, even if 2 generators break down, let's say VA and VB, even then this idiot VC will continue to supply some power. Right? But in star case, if 2 generators fail, well, you have a nice day. That's it. Nothing can be done then. Because if 2 generators are broken, then the entire thing is broken. But the entire path is gone. Okay. Maybe, yeah, even then I can see if VA and VB are broken, VC along with neutral can still supply some power. Yes. One generator can hopefully be still employed, but you have to get neutral in the game to supply power. You cannot supply power between A and C directly or between A and B directly. These are logistics, That's why engineers want to have these 2 configurations in front of them all the time. And of course, in reality, this diagram was very ideal. We were showing no losses anywhere. In reality, the generators will have losses. They'll have a they'll have internal impedance, which is being denoted by a series RL combination. So the actual voltage coming out from the generator will be the theoretical voltage minus the drop in the internal impedance. On the load side also, no, sorry, this is not load side. I'm sorry. This is the delta connection for the generator. Here also same story. You have internal impedances that will have to be accounted for when you are actually doing detailed calculation about voltage, current, and power at various points in the power system. If nothing is given in the problem to you, you assume that losses are not there. Whatever is not given should be zero as far as you are concerned. Silence means it's not there. That's the way the course operates. Unless mentioned, you assume that loss is not there. So if I'm giving you a signal generator with so much output coming out, that means I'm ignoring the input impedance value completely. You assume that losses are not there. And of course, whether delta or Y, it's the same story in both cases. These three sinusoidal voltages have to have same amplitude, same frequency, and they differ by 120 degree with each other. And that can be plus or minus, by the way, both. In fact, yeah, they are mentioning it right here. If you have minus 120 degree and minus 240 degree, then it is called positive sequence. And if you have plus 120 degree and plus 240 degree, then it is called negative sequence. There is a reason for it. And I told you last time, then instead of ABC, we also use RYB notations to denote the color of the wire, which is being used as the insulator on the conductors. R means red, Y means yellow, and B means blue. And for neutral, we use black color wire so that it is easy for everyone to diagnose problems. This is theory. We'll go through it later. Again, yeah, they are showing the four possibilities. The sources can be connected either in Y or delta, and load can also be connected in Y or delta. So you have four possibilities: YY, Y delta, delta Y, or delta delta. They are saying it is sufficient to analyze YY. Others can possibly be analyzed based on the results we have got for YY. In fact, I intend to do that. I'll be concentrating a lot on YY configuration, where the sources are connected in Y configuration and load is also connected in Y configuration. If time permits, I'll probably talk a little bit about delta-delta configuration also. But I will not do any analysis of Y delta and delta Y connections. It is possible to analyze them by using suitable transformation on the load side, delta Y or Y delta, using formulas that we have already derived today. Okay, this analysis probably is not going to be done right now. I'll do it in my own notes, but let me complete this. Let's see if something. Single phase equivalence is normally used for balanced systems. I'll come to all that in my own notes. A lot of mathematics. I'll do it in my own way. Numerical problems. Maybe I'll look at these problems once I have done the theory. I'll come back to this problem at that time. Lot of calculations involving complex numbers. You have to be prepared for it. My apologies, but that is the way this course works. Okay, they are doing Y delta analysis also. At least you see the conceptual part of it. See, this load we have already seen how to convert it into equivalent delta or star. These formulas are already known to you. Power calculations, we'll come to all that later. Let me close this. Torque, we'll come to torque much later. Okay. I'm just seeing. Okay, this last point, last slide is probably important. What's the three-phase circuit? Three sources. Lines, of course, are probably going to have even more conductors than three. And load, of course, can be anything. Single phase, three phase, combination, whatever. Load is something that you don't control. It is the society that controls the load. You have to be prepared for everything. Yeah, okay, second portion will be clear. Second question will be clear when we start doing the analysis. How to get all the unknowns? Well, you have to use KCL and KVL and Ohm's law in complex domain all the time.